What is up, YouTube? It is me, Topher Crost, and I'm here to do a video for you. About a year ago, I did a top 10 Dark Magician support card video. If you guys remember, it got really popular, and it's actually the top video on YouTube when you search support cards for Dark Magician, so thank you for that. But it's been a year since I made that video, and we've gotten more support since then, and my opinions on the cards have changed quite a bit. A lot of the cards aren't as high up on the list, or new cards have taken their place. But that doesn't mean I love the archetype any less, or that I think my other list is invalid. It just means opinions change. But I do think it's time to update the list. And this time, I'll be doing 20. That's right, top 20 Dark Magician support cards. Mostly because, well, Dark Magician has a lot of support. And if you don't see your favorite card on this list, please note that there's a lot of Dark Magician cards. I could have missed it, or it just barely didn't make the list. Also, just know, like with my last list, only cards that are directly related to the Dark Magician archetype will be on this list. So no Ebon Illusion Magician or Big Eye or anything like that. Only Dark Magician cards. Also, I'm going to be going over the cards a bit quicker than I did on my last list. I want to try to keep them all under a minute so this list doesn't end up being a half hour long. We have a lot of cards to go through, and if you want, a better explanation on the cards, please comment down below and I will be more than happy to discuss with you guys. I love interacting with you guys when I can. Alright, I got one more thing to go over and then we're going to start the list. About 3 weeks ago, I uploaded something that if you like Avatar: The Last Airbender, that I think you'll really enjoy. It's a choose your own adventure story that tells you what kind of bender you are. And it doesn't just have fire, earth, air, and water. You can also get a few other answers. I believe there are around 15 in total endings that you can get. So please check that out if you have the time. It means a lot to me. If you do decide to go do the Avatar video, please, in that video in the comments below, let me know what you got. I'm curious and I love interacting with you guys. So without further ado, I've been putting it off long enough, let's get into the top 20 Dark Magician support cards. You ready? Here we go. Coming in at the bottom of our list at the number 20 spot is Dark Magic Curtain. Now, while it can get a Dark Magician straight from your deck to the field, it has so many drawbacks, and that's what puts it at the bottom of this list. It is an okay card, but it does require half of your life points, not to mention you can't really do much else with monsters that turn except set. That being said, it can help you in a bind, but for the most part, you won't run it in your modern-day Dark Magician deck. Alright, on to number 19, and at number 19 is Skilled Dark Magician. One of my favorite older cards. Unfortunately isn't that great today, but back in the day it was so good. Coming in the field with 1900 attack, which is pretty much as strong as you can get for a 4-star unless you have 0 defense or have some really bad drawback effect, it gets even better. After playing 3 spell cards and getting 3 spell counters on Skilled Dark Magician, you get to special summon a Dark Magician from your hand, deck, or graveyard by tributing Skilled Dark Magician with the 3 spell counters. While it is very slow for today's metagame, I will always love the Skilled Dark Magician, and I do miss using it in my deck. Next up, at number 18, we actually have 2 cards that you use in tandem, Dark Magician of Chaos and Dedication through Light and Darkness. Now, the reason Dedication of Light and Darkness is on this list is pretty obvious. It's to use to take Dark Magician and get Dark Magician of Chaos out on the field. But if you can get Dark Magician of Chaos on the field, he's a very solid monster with 2,800 attack and 2,600 defense. But it's Dark Magician of Chaos' effect that really makes him shine. Not only when he attacks a monster does it banish the monster instead of send him to the graveyard, when he is normal or special summoned at the end of the turn, you get to put a spell from your graveyard into your hand, which can recycle limited spells and things of that nature. Although he is still a little hard to get out in modern day Yu-Gi-Oh! Because you have to set up for him, and it usually takes more than a turn. And the last part of his effect is a big drawback, which states that once he's off the field, he's banished, which is very unfortunate because there could be a lot of ways to recycle him over and over if it wasn't for this part of his effect. Everything being said though, you still might want to consider running these cards in your Dark Magician deck. You may not go meta, but it is a lot of fun. Coming in at number 17 is a card we all wish would get updated because we really want to play her in our Dark Magician decks, and that is Dark Magician Girl. Also, at this spot is going to be Dark Burning Magic, because if you're playing Dark Magician Girl in a kind of modern Dark Magician deck, you're going to probably be running Dark Burning Magic. Dark Magician Girl is a pretty standard card, coming in at 6 stars with 2000 attack and 1700 defense, which is pretty good. Her effect that used to be really good, but not so good anymore, is that she gets 300 attack for every Dark Magician and or Magician of Black Chaos in the graveyard. But combined her with Dark Burning Magic, and there's still some hope for our favorite Lady Magician. If you have Dark Magician and Dark Magician Girl out on the field at the same time, you can activate Dark Burning Magic and it destroys your opponent's entire field. That's insane, but unfortunately not that great considering how much it takes to set up. Boards get broken so constantly in today's metagame that it really doesn't hold up. However, if you do manage to get it out, no matter who you're against, they will be surprised. I would recommend running it if you just want to have a little fun and troll some people, because like I said, if you do get it out, you're gonna have a ball. Coming in at our number 16 spot is Dark Eradicator Warlock. Now the only reason this one is so high is because how easy it is to get out. Literally all you have to do is have a Dark Magician on the field and you contribute it and summon Dark Eradicator Warlock. Its effect is kind of good in the fact that it takes 1000 life points from your opponents for every normal spell card somebody plays. Unfortunately, the effect is very limited, and by the time you got him out, most of the normal spell cards, which are mostly draw power, are going to be used up. Sure, you could try running him at 3 to always have him, so that way if you go first, his effect could be pretty useful if your opponent has to use a lot of draw power, but even that's not really a good idea because he would brick pretty heavy. Unless you guaranteed get a Dark Magician out on the first turn, which a lot of Dark Magician decks don't do, they wait till your opponent's turn, he's not very good. Other than his effect, which like I said was okay, he's only running 2500 attack and 2100 defense, so he doesn't give you any boost besides the fact that he has the effect. And running him in a Dark Magician deck where most cards revolve around a card actually called Dark Magician, it's not really going to work for Dark Eradicator Warlock. But once again, he did make it this high because of his ease of play. But there's really not much else to say about him, so let's get on to our next card. So the last 5 cards I talked about on this list are more casual. The next 4 cards that I'm about to talk about are cards that you may or may not see in a really competitive Dark Magician deck depending on how the player plays. And the first card and our number 14 pick is Palladium Oracle Mahad. Now this card is so easy to get out. All you have to do is draw him. And once you draw him, you get to play him on the field. His effects still get better though. If he fights any dark monster, his attack doubles to 5000, which is a huge attack boost, and kind of, if you've seen the Dark Side of Dimensions movie, how Yami defeated the evil Cubics guy, which I cannot remember his name at the moment. But that's not all this card does. If it dies for any reason, gets destroyed, you get to bring a Dark Magician out onto the field from your deck, hand, or graveyard. Now I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Topher, well, if these effects are so good and he's so easy to summon, why don't people play him more? Well, the answer is he is so bricky. The unfortunate part about this card is that if you have him in your beginning hand, or you draw him with an incorrect card like Allure of Darkness which doesn't activate his effect, you are now stuck with a pretty much useless card in your hand that you can't use anything for. He's not even a dark type monster to use for an allure target. So playing him at any more than 1 or maybe 2, and 2's pushing it, he gets very, very bricky, and it really kills deck flow. He is a great card, but unfortunately, unless you're playing a slower format of Yu-Gi-Oh!, he isn't going to probably be in your deck. Next up at our number 14 spot is Dark Magic Expanded, a quick play spell card that has 1 of 3 effects depending on how many Dark Magicians and or Dark Magician Girls you have on your field or your graveyard. Let's go through the effects real quick and then I'll explain probably why you won't play it in your deck. The first effect, which requires 1 of the aforementioned spellcasters to be on the field or the graveyard, is Dark Spellcaster type monster on the field gains 1000 attack until the end of this turn. The second effect, which requires 2, is this turn your opponent cannot activate cards and effects in response to your spell or trap card or effect activation. Also, spell or trap cards you control cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects. And the third effect, which requires 3 of the aforementioned spellcasters to be on the field or the graveyard, is Dark Spellcaster type monsters you control are currently unaffected by your opponent's card effects until the end of turn. Okay, so let me go over the good parts about this card, kind of flesh out a few things. The first thing is, you get all the effects depending on how many Dark Magicians / Dark Magician Girls you have on the field. For instance, if you have 2, you get both of the effects, the first 2 effects, and you activate them in sequence. Also, the card's a quick play, which means you can use it at just about any time. That is the good part about the card. The bad part about the cards is the actual requirements. you're not going to usually have 3+ Dark Magicians and or Dark Magician girls in your graveyard or on the field at any time. A lot of the times you're recycling the same Dark Magician, and even if you do manage to get all 3 out on the field, by then you're either going to be in a spot where Dark Magic Expanded probably won't help you out all that much, or there are other cards that do it better. In fact, you'll notice as we go further up on this list that there are going to be cards that just straight up can replace Dark Magic Expanded. It covers a lot in one card, but the requirements to play it, it just doesn't make it worth it, except maybe to play one in your deck. And again, I'm not saying it's a bad card, I'm just saying that there are other Dark Magician cards that do it better, or just maybe a straight up Solemn Judgment or Solemn Strike, which can do certain things better. Okay, I'm out of breath talking about this card. There was so much to cover. Let's just get on to the next card. Okay, it's time to talk about the better version of Dark Magic Curtain. Coming in at our number 13 is Magician's Robe. A good monster to have on the field in defense position, but a lot of times you may be playing it in attack position. That's because it has a really good effect comboed with cards like Dark Magic Circle. If you discard a spell or trap card during your opponent's turn, you can special summon a Dark Magician straight from your deck. It's pretty easy to do, especially in a Dark Magician deck. You're going to be playing a lot of spell and trap cards. And like I said, it combos off with some other good cards, especially Dark Magic Circle. Also, just for a good kicker, if the card happens to be in your graveyard and you activate a spell or trap on your opponent's turn, you can bring it back to the field, which then is pretty good because then you can chain and use its other effect to get Dark Magician out. Now, the only downside to this card is that you can only use the effects once per turn, but it is a good card to consider putting in your Dark Magician deck. Coming in at our number 12 slot is my favorite fusion monster for Dark Magicians, and that is Dark Paladin. Actually, probably my second favorite monster in the whole game, next to the Dark Magician himself, of course. This fusion monster is insanely good, and yes, it can be summoned by Eye of Timaeus, so you don't really need Buster Blader. Dark Paladin's first effect is that you can negate spell cards that your opponent plays, period, by discarding a card in your hand, which is really good. It's not even a once per turn effect, so you can negate pretty much as many spell cards as you want, assuming up to 7 if you don't play infinite cards, but it really doesn't matter because if you have to negate 7 spell cards, your opponent is insane. That being said, the effect is really good, and if you get him out early enough, your opponent won't be playing any spells. He is also really good against dragons, getting an extra 500 attack for every dragon on the field or in the graveyard. But that doesn't mean he doesn't have a solid attack when he comes out. He is sporting a massive 2900 attack and 2400 defense. This is a very solid card, and I would recommend playing at least one in your extra deck. Okay, so now we're getting into the top 11 cards, and the thing about the top 11 cards is you're going to see them in most Dark Magician decks, if not all Dark Magician decks. These cards are the creme de la creme. These cards are the cards that everybody, or at least most people, will recommend that you play in a Dark Magician deck, and I recommend you play every single one of them because they're all great cards. Whether you play 3 or 2 or 1, all depends on the cards, but to me, all of these cards should be in your deck somewhere. Now, without further ado, let's get on to our number 11, and that is Dark Magic Attack. Why do you want to play Dark Magic Attack? Because it's extremely searchable, and it kills your opponent's entire back row. If you play half the cards that you're supposed to in a Dark Magician deck, you will always have Dark Magic Attack at the ready when you need it, and it destroys their entire back row. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that, but there isn't really much else to say about the card, except yes, you do have to have Dark Magician on the field, but it really doesn't matter because if you're playing Dark Magician the right way, you should always have a Dark Magician on the field. So yeah, play Dark Magic Attack. Okay, now it's on to the second really awesome card and our number 10 pick, Illusion Magic. This card is pretty simple. You sacrifice a spellcaster, which hopefully, if you're playing Dark Magicians, you have on the field, and you get 2 Dark Magicians into your hand. Now, it doesn't sound like much, but having Dark Magician in your hand is very, very important for Dark Magician decks. Pretty much any play you're going to set up in a Dark Magician deck, you want to have at least 1 Dark Magician in your hand, and that's where this card comes in handy. Not to mention it's a quick play, so you can use it on your opponent's turn, which pulls out cards like Magician of Dark Illusion from your hand. Now, unfortunately, it is only at number 10, because there's a lot of cards that outclass it or just do what it does better. One card that I'm thinking of specifically, which is further up on this list. Speaking of which, it's time to get on to our number 9 pick. Coming in at number 9 is Dark Magic Inheritance. Now this card is pretty easy to explain. Basically, you banish 2 spells from your graveyard and you get to search for a spell card that says either Dark Magician or Dark Magician Girl in its text. Sounds really good, not to mention it is a quick play. I can't tell you how many times this card has saved my butt in a duel. There really isn't much more to say about it, except the reason it's so low on the list, even though it can search pretty much any Dark Magician card, is due to its 2-cost spell removal from the graveyard effect. Unfortunately, at the beginning of the game, unless you get a lot of draw power, easy to use spells that you can get to your graveyard quickly, it's kind of bricky, so you don't want to run it at more than 1, maybe 2 in the deck. But besides that, it's an all-around good card, and I would definitely recommend you run at least 1 in your Dark Magician deck. Now on to our number 8, the Eye of Timaeus. So this card is basically better polymerization for Dark Magician, essentially taking out any other fusion materials you need except Dark Magician. Need Dark Paladin? Just pop on Eye of Timaeus, and now you have a Dark Paladin. Need Amulet Dragon? Just pop on Eye of Timaeus, and now you have an Amulet Dragon. The only reason this card isn't significantly higher on the list is that it cannot be searched by cards that let you search for Dark Magician cards. Because of its wording saying a Dark Magician monster, instead of just straight up saying Dark Magician, it makes it to where you can't search it. If it wasn't for that, this card would be way higher up on the list, but I'd still recommend playing it in your Dark Magician deck at least 1. Alright, we're getting into the top 7, and with that being said, let's go ahead and introduce our number 7 pick, Dark Magician, the Dragon Knight. This card is fantastic. While it's not my favorite fusion for Dark Magician, it is definitely, in my opinion, the most useful. It gives protection to your spell and trap cards while simultaneously also being a Dark Magician, which means if you summon it, you can activate Dark Magic Circle and it's protected by Eternal Soul. Speaking of which, Eternal Soul and Dark Magician the Dragon Knight kind of put you in this weird lock to where your opponent can't destroy your magic or trap cards because of Dark Magician the Dragon Knight, and they can't destroy Dark Magician the Dragon Knight because of Eternal Soul. So the only way to beat Dark Magician the Dragon Knight is to beat it by battle. But even if they do manage to destroy it by battle, you can instantly revive it with Eternal Soul, and then if you have Dark Magic Circle on the field, you get that automatic banish. It's kind of ridiculous. The only reason he's this low on the list is because getting him out isn't exactly easy, especially if you don't build your deck around Eye of Timaeus, which, as you know from the last entry, isn't searchable. That being said, Dark Magician the Dragon Knight is definitely worth putting in your deck. A lot of people don't recommend him because he's kind of hard to get out, but if you do get him out, he is one of the best trump cards for Dark Magician deck. End of story, and hands down the best fusion. On to our number 6, and at number 6 is Magician of Dark Illusion. So the big thing about Magician of Dark Illusion is that he is a Dark Magician while he is on the field. Not only that, getting him out is pretty easy in a Dark Magician deck. All you have to do is activate a spell or trap, or an effect of a spell or trap on your opponent's turn. That's right, all you have to do is activate one spell or trap on your opponent's turn, and then you get to special summon this guy straight from your hand. The other cool thing about him is that if you activate a spell or trap while he's on the field, you can revive a Dark Magician from the graveyard to the field. Really good for setting up XYZ plays, especially using Magician's Navigation and cards like that to get him out. I don't think there's a Dark Magician player that doesn't run this guy in his deck at least 1. His biggest downside is that he can brick if you get more than one of them in your hand and you don't get a spell or trap you can activate on your opponent's turn. But in a Dark Magician deck, how often does that honestly happen? I would recommend running 1 to 2 in any good Dark Magician deck. Now we're into our top 5. These cards are the best of the best, and I'm going to tell you that my top 5 has definitely changed a little bit since the last list that I've done. Now all of these cards I can say without a doubt I will probably always run 3 of in my deck. These are staple cards to just about any Dark Magician deck, and you will probably see these cards in every Dark Magician deck. And now, coming in at our number 5 is a Prentice Illusion Magician. I remember hyping up this card so much. In fact, any video with this card in it is pretty much the most popular videos on my channel, and I owe a lot of my success to this card. So what makes this card so good, you may be asking? Well, getting it onto the field is easy. Summoning it just requires you to discard a card, so it's basically the Tricky, except with more effects and way better effects. As soon as you get this monster onto the field, you get a Dark Magician straight to your hand, so basically, it's already a better illusion magic. But if I'm being honest, in most duels, it never even makes it to the field because of its second effect. During the battle phase, if a monster attacks one of your Dark Spellcaster types, during the damage calculation step, you can send a Prentice Illusion Magician to the graveyard, and it automatically gets 2,000 more attack and defense. That is insane. It's basically a better Honest, but for dark spellcaster types, which makes it so good in this deck. All that packed into a card with 2000 attack, that's definitely not bad and give you a great start in a duel. And this card is so hard to brick with. Literally the only way you could brick with this card is if you drew into it, you have no monsters on the field and no cards in your hand. And we're just at the tip of the top 5 iceberg. Let's get on to number 4. Alright, number 4, Eternal Soul. That's right, I'm getting straight into it because there's a little bit to say about this card. First off, as long as this card is on the field, your Dark Magicians have protection from your opponent's card effects. That's already really good. But it does not stop there. Being a continuous trap card means it stays on the field forever and you can activate one of its other effects once per turn. The first effect is it allows you to special summon a Dark Magician from your hand or graveyard. Again, since this is a trap card, you can do it on your opponent's turn. And that's also like a once per turn Monster Reborn for Dark Magicians, or you know, if you're stuck with one in your hand, you can get it out onto the field. Its second effect allows you to pull a Dark Magic attack or an 1,000 Knives from your deck to your hand. Now let's be honest, if we're using that second effect, it's probably for Dark Magic attack, but you can do either, so it's a search card on top of everything else. That's a lot of awesome in one card. Now let's talk about the downsides that, to be honest, if you know how to play the deck, aren't really downsides. The first one is that it only can be activated once per turn, but if you are good at timing, that shouldn't be a big issue. The big downside to this card is that if it gets removed from the field, all of your monsters go to the graveyard. But if you're playing the deck right, this effect won't hinder you too much because of cards like Magician's Navigation, which hopefully you'll have one in the graveyard, and or Dark Magician the Dragon Knight, which will protect this card. Either one of these is a very easy way to get out of it. Also cards like Solemn Judgment, and as long as this card remains on the field, you'll pretty much have no problems except during the battle phase. It covers so many weaknesses in a Dark Magician deck, and you'll always be playing it at 3, at least in 99% of Dark Magician decks, it had to be this far up on the list. And I know what you're thinking, this card's really, really good. What cards could be beating this card to be in the top 3 of my list? Well, we're about to find out. Let's get on to number 3. At number 3, we have Magician's Rod. Best search card, hands down, for Dark Magician, period. The end. Why are you not playing 3 of these in your deck? No, seriously, they're not even expensive. They have common versions. What the hell's wrong with you? If you don't have 3 in your deck, just stop watching. You cannot be part of, I don't want to, just go away, because you need to be running 3 of these. Like, I cannot stress enough how great this card is. And if you don't know what I mean, do you want to know what it takes to search for a Dark Magician card with this card? Literally, all you have to do is normal summon Magician's Rod to the field. That's it. That's right, this card can literally search for any spell or trap that lists Dark Magician in the name. That means if you needed a Dark Magician in your hand, you could search for Illusion Magic. If you need Eternal Soul, search for Eternal Soul. All you gotta do is plop this guy down on the field. Not to mention, he's a 3-star 1600, which isn't the best, but it's not bad. Oh, and did I mention, literally all you have to do is normal summon him, and you get to search for a Dark Magician card? And I know what you're thinking. Oh, well, I guess it doesn't get any better than that. You only get to use him once. Well, that's not true, because if he's in the graveyard, all you have to do is activate a spell or trap on your opponent's turn, and he comes back to your hand. That's right, he's completely recyclable, and with the right strategy, you'll be searching more and more Dark Magician cards. And there's still 2 more cards better than this one. I know, it's crazy. Anyway, let's continue. Okay, so here's the thing about the top 2. In my last list, I think it was controversial, and in this list, I think it was controversial on which one of these cards should be first and which one of these cards should be second. So, to be fair, I think one's slightly more useful than the other, but my opinion on them changes daily. The thing is, they probably should both be at number 1, but I didn't want to cop out and just put 2 cards at number 1 because I couldn't decide. So I picked the one that I think I use more and would rather have in my hand for number 1. But that being said, again, it's really up to your opinion. And at number 2, we have Dark Magical Circle. This card is an absolute 100% must play in a Dark Magician deck. Dark Magical Circle is a continuous spell card that banishes literally any card on your opponent's field, and all you have to do is summon a Dark Magician, which, if you're playing a Dark Magician deck, shouldn't be all that hard. And it's continuous, meaning you can do this once per turn. Yes, it does have a once per turn effect, but you still get to banish any card on your opponent's side of the field once per turn with this card. But it doesn't stop there. It also allows you to look at the top 3 cards of your deck, and if there just so happens to be a Dark Magician and or a Dark Magician spell or trap, you can put it into your hand. And just to put icing on the cake, you get to put the other 2 cards back in any order. This is a must play. I can't talk about it much because there really isn't too much to this card, but if you were not playing 3 in your Dark Magician deck, you were doomed to fail. Play 3, have fun, banish some shit. Alright, coming in at our top spot, the number 1 card, the most useful Dark Magician support card, is actually the same as it was on my last list. Yes, a lot of the cards changed from my last list to this list, but not this one. Coming in at our number 1 spot is Magician Navigation. What can I say about this card except it is the literal perfect setup and protection card for a Dark Magician deck. And if you don't know what I mean by that, let me explain. First off, when you activate this card, it allows you to special summon a Dark Magician straight from your hand, and when you do, you get to pull a level 7 or lower Dark Spellcaster type monster from your deck to the field. That means if you want to, you can pull out another Dark Magician, or you could do something like pull out Magician of Dark Illusion and maybe get some combos off with that and set up for some XYZ plays. Or maybe you want to pull out a Prentice Illusion Magician and get another Dark Magician into your hand because you need that, and maybe you're about to chain an Eternal Soul or another Magician's Navigation. But it doesn't stop there. Once it's in the graveyard, as long as you have a Dark Magician on the field, you can use Magician's Navigation to negate a spell or trap till the end of turn. Now, while it doesn't destroy the spell or trap, it can really help you out in some bad situations. My main use for Magician's Navigation, once it's in the graveyard, is to negate something like Mystical Space Typhoon trying to destroy my Eternal Souls or something like that. Now, the downside to this card, the one downside is that it banishes once you've negated something, but the fact that you're probably going to run 3 of these in your deck just makes it so much better. That's so much negate in the graveyard, and literally the biggest reason you're going to use it is to protect Eternal Souls and cards like Eternal Souls that you just don't want to get destroyed in your back row. In my opinion, there is nothing that has ever happened to support the Dark Magician archetype that is better than Magician's Navigation. I will always run 3 in my deck, and I cannot see any reason why you wouldn't do the same. Alright, that's it for this video. Did you like my list? Comment below and let me know. And also comment your top 20 or maybe your top 10 Dark Magician support cards. I love to see what you guys think. I love interacting with you guys when I have the time. And I really haven't been talking to you guys enough lately, so let's get some conversation started down in those comments. Also, please like the video, and thank you for supporting my channel. I really appreciate it. One last thing, again, that Airbender video that I mentioned at the beginning of this, if you just go check that out if you like Avatar: Last Airbender, that would be fantastic. Thank you. Whew. You guys have a wonderful day, and I will hopefully be posting more here soon. You guys are great, and again, I want to say thank you. Topher Crost out.